Christina Grimmie, by the way. And 3, 2.
Good morning, Nashua. We're back into our second part of 3. I just wanted to say to all my friends out there, to all my 911 EMS responders, happy EMS week. This is a great week for us. And Mr. Trump did make a special notation of it, and I want to say thank you to that. I'm hoping it's my letter, but I know it's more than that. We just want to say thank you, and you all be safe out there, watch your backs, and be extra, extra careful. So we're going to go on and talk with Mr. Hal Shurtleff, and he's going to talk to us about Camp Constitution. This is a camp that's for families. It's about a week long. It's here in New Hampshire. And it's a chance to learn about the Constitution, to teach your kids, to learn yourself exactly what it's all about, something that's not taught anymore and is very much misunderstood. So tell us about this a little bit more.
Well, thank you. Yes, Camp Constitution is actually a New Hampshire-based charitable trust, and it is a family camp. This year it's a day and a week long. It takes place in Ringe, New Hampshire, at the Toanipi Christian Retreat Center, July 2nd to the 9th. Now, we do a lot more than run camps. In fact, since I became full-time, the only full-time person, full-time is sort of an understatement, you know, I don't punch in and punch out. It's a labor of love, but in February I became full-time. But we started a speakers bureau, and you had a speaker, Father Michael Carl, on the air a little while ago, and Duke Pesta has come through here before, and last week we had Reverend Stevie Kraft in the greater Boston area. We also had one of our speakers at our Trump rally in New London, Connecticut, and that was it was an interesting experience.
I bet it was.
That was last week.
Not a purple state, huh?
No, it wasn't. And the talk show host down there was very grateful that she was a lady who was hosting it, Laurie Kavanaugh. But this year's camp, again, July 2nd to the 9th, Sunday afternoon to Sunday morning. And it's a family camp, but we also have unaccompanied minors, and we even have a few unaccompanied adults who come as counselors or someone doing the videotaping and what have you. But a lot of families, a lot of new families are signing up this year. And some of the things we do at our camp, I suppose I can kind of give you I can tell you some of the instructors. We have formal classroom instruction, but it's not your typical open the textbook up and then the bell rings and everyone's out and glad. We have some phenomenal instructors. Some of them have been coming every year, like Reverend Stevie Kraft and Pastor Earl Wallace, but we also have folks like Larry Pratt of Gun Owners of America.
Oh.
He'll be there. He'll be flying in, for 2 classes, flying in and flying out. It's not going to be the whole week, unfortunately. We have Professor Willie Soon, who is I call him one of the world's top climate realists. He is a atmospheric scientist out of the Smithsonian Harvard Institute in Cambridge, and I met him a few years ago at a climate change conference, and I got to know him a little better in last November when I was doing a special project for Ed Griffin and videotaping his presentation. He's going to be there giving a couple of classes. One of them will be he'll be doing a history of climate alarmists. In the 70s it was the global cooling, and then the LR scare, and ozone hole, and what was the other one? Ozone hole, and acid rain, and all these.
Oh yeah.
So he'd be going over
And now we
these,
have global warming.
And now it's global warming. And actually, Willie's claim to fame was in 2003 or so. He was the one that refuted the hockey stick graph that was presented to the world by a Michael Mann, whom he knew. This hockey stick graph was what it showed a steady up until 30 or 40 years ago. Then it looks like a hockey stick. Wow, all this CO2 in the environment, and it's terrible. It was a real fraud, and he exposed it. And
well, we actually had I can't remember the name of the person, but they were on a couple months ago, and scientist, and he was saying that actually there's not enough CO2. They've cleaned it up so much that there's not enough CO2, and that we really, really need to have some. I mean, obviously in some cities there's too much, but I digress. But yeah, so
there was actually 2 scientists, a father and Sherwood Idso out of Arizona, and they did an enhanced environment where they pumped in tons and tons of CO2, and the tomato plants look like trees. And they testified before Congress. This was Al Gore was a senator. And here are scientists. They have no axe to grind. They're not working for Exxon. And by the way, the big oil companies are the ones that actually created the environmental movement. But we are moving. So he's one of the instructors. Who else do we have? We have Alex Newman, who is a writer for WorldNet Daily and the New American Magazine, and one of the top experts on it, not just the global warming issue, but Common Core. And I don't think he's been on the air here before. No,
I don't think so.
He also co-authored a book along with a man I want to talk about, Sam Blumenfeld, and since we're taping it, I can show it to the camera. Sam actually had a radio show here a few years ago. He passed away in 2015. But the book was called Crimes of the Educators, and a history of government education and what from the 1840s onward. And they're not talking about the local school teacher. They're talking about the people like John Dewey and Horace Mann and others that knew exactly what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And with Common Core, they know exactly. It isn't a question of, well, we're trying our best. We're trying to make things better. They know that it's dumbing people down. It's inexcusable. It's not like and it talks about how the look-say method was introduced in the public schools. So he's actually coming in. He's really giving us. He's got a busy schedule, but he's flying in on a Sunday and leaving like Monday afternoon. So he'll be in for. I think we're going to get one class out of him, but I'm very happy about that. And we have Catherine White, who she's an accountant out of Lexington, Massachusetts. Does a lot of. She teaches a course on the Constitution she'll be giving.
Nice.
And our camp falls on Independence Day, July 4th. We don't celebrate the day, but we celebrate what happened on that day. So we're going to be doing some special things, a reenactment. We're hoping we can pull it off by one of your local, Eric Eastman, who had been a state rep. And he had played Thomas Jefferson. He's got the long hair, so he doesn't really have to put a wig on. We're hoping we can pull off that a little reenactment of the signing of the Declaration. It should be fun. And then we have some field trips scheduled. And who else we have coming in? Let's see, Willie Soon, Alex Newman. Chris Ann Hall was going to come this year, but she had to cancel. She was very reluctantly canceled.
Yeah.
But she's got a busy schedule, and I think she needs
These people are very busy.
A little recuperation. And John McManus, who's also an author, he's authored numerous books. He'll be there for a couple of days. But it's a very full week, and my daughter's in the studio. One of my daughters, she doesn't want to come on the air, but she, although she's been on the radio before, but it's sort of a highlight of her year. And so I can give you what a typical day looks like. We get up at 6:30 is optional wake-up time. We have an optional morning run or a swim, or both, if you can do it both. They call it a polar bear swim. But July in New Hampshire, it's not like you got to cut a hole in the ice and jump in.
But it's pretty darn close.
Yeah, I don't know. It depends what you're used to. You hardy New Hampshire.
It is New Hampshire.
They say it's below zero in New Hampshire when the neighbors button the top button of their flannel. Sure,
Exactly.
so that you should be too early. But anyway, then we have flag raising. We have a devotion every morning at the flagpole, flag raising, Bible. We want the campers to participate as much as possible. Now, we have 3 classes in the morning. We also have a program for the younger children, like 5 to 11, called Patriot Camp, where they learn about, it's not at the same level as the other campers, but they learn some great history lessons, certain characters, and they might dress up in costumes. I think one year they did a little parade. They all dressed up in colonial outfits. It was really cool. Yeah, it was really neat. Yeah. And then the afternoon activities, we have organized events, basketball, volleyball. Gaga was a very popular camp. I never heard of such a thing.
What is
but
that?
Well, you get this octagon-shaped wooden thing, and they throw a ball around, and I don't know, but they enjoy it. And then we have swimming and hiking. We take an optional hike out Mount Monadnock, I think Thursday afternoon of camp. Wednesday will be an optional field trip to the Ringe, New Hampshire, the Ringe Historical Society and the Cathedral of the Pines. They have an interesting World War II museum there. I think the founders of that place, their son was killed in World War II. I think he was an aviator, so they did it in his honor.
Oh, wow. It's not just a place to get married?
Yes, you can get married there too, I guess, yeah. But, and the Ringe Historical Society, some of these little historical societies are so rich in history, and they're open one day a week, and they don't have a big budget. But they have a discharge that George Washington signed, That's kind of neat.
Really?
Yeah, some cool stuff like that in the collection, yeah. And of course, my family history, but I won't bore you, but I have historical roots to the town that go back to the 1700s, In fact, I'm speaking there at the library. The library is called the Ingalls Library, and Ingalls was killed in the Civil War, and his grandma was a Shurtleff, so that's kind of neat. So that's kind of neat. So I'll be able to promote the camp as well.
Excellent.
Then we have in the evening we have two other classes, and then we have campfire. And a campfire tends to be the highlight. A lot of the people who are new to the camp you know, we don't, the campers aren't walking around with their cell phones and texting every 5 seconds. No, you turn them into the counselors, or mom and dad.
Yeah.
You can call mom and dad at home, you know, when there's a break, but you're not gonna walk around a silly thing. And at the campfire, we're not doing any rock music or anything like that. We have skits and we sing, we have a little songbook and wholesome things and, you know, Christian hymns or, you know, some of the camp songs. Within a couple of days, they really get into it. They really like it, you know. I mean, it's a different experience for a lot of people. And
The
then
way we grew up,
the way
the way we all grew up.
yeah, to some extent,
Yeah.
yeah, because every generation, you know, my parents, oh, we did, you had it made, you know, we used to have to walk 5 miles.
5 miles up,
Yeah.
5 miles
Barefooted.
uphill, barefoot,
Barefooted.
in
In
the
the
snow.
snow.
After
We
they-
can really claim that.
After they chopped a cord of wood and milked the 20 cows, you know, well, we did, you know, it wasn't that bad, you know. I mean, I did have chickens in the city, so we had to feed the chickens, but, and my school was across the street, you know, so it wasn't that bad. I didn't have to walk 5
I
miles.
remember it wasn't 5 miles. It felt like it because you know when you're like 7 and 8 years
Yeah,
old, you
your
got
feet
little
is-
legs.
Yeah, yeah.
But I remember we were living in Minnesota, and I remember the snow drifts being 12 and 13 feet
Yeah.
high.
Yeah.
And you'd be walking to school, and you had, back when the girls wore dresses and you wore tights and, you know, your little patent leather shoes there. But then to walk to school and then, or go out to recess, you'd put on those huge, puffy, what are the snow pants?
Overalls.
Yeah, snow pants though, you know,
Oh,
real
yeah, yeah,
puffy
Yeah,
ones.
yeah.
And then the scarf and the
Snowsuit.
mitten,
They called them the
snowsuit.
snowsuit.
Yes, it was
Yeah.
only the half, they didn't have the whole suits then, they were separate.
Yeah.
And,
With
yeah, and then trying to get your boots on over that, so yeah, I've done
I
that.
remember that in Kansas City.
Really, yeah.
I remember coming out of, we lived in a Cape house and it had probably 5 steps up to the front door, and the snow would be, the drifts would be above that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. We
I
don't,
remember that.
you know,
Well, if people who are listening would like to learn more about the camp, we have a website.
Oh, yes.
Campconstitution.net. And you could see, you know, what we have to offer. Our YouTube channel, we almost got 250,000 views. So, which is really a drop in the bucket.
Yeah,
But
no,
it's a
that's
beginning,
pretty
you
good.
know?
Yeah, you gotta
You know,
start
for
somewhere.
something that was all volunteer and until February when I decided to do it full time. But we're kind of excited about some of the things that are happening, some of the doors that are opening to us, and possibility of having a place in Lexington, Massachusetts, and a few, you know.
That
that's
would be
exciting.
Yeah,
What a
so,
great place for a historic.
That would be neat.
And we're
Yeah.
trying to, we want to expand, we want to start other camps around
Mhm.
the country and do weekend events with the Speakers Bureau. We could put on a weekend event or an all-day event. It doesn't have to be a week long, and we're looking for lots of help because all this, a lot of the parents, we hear it all the time, you know, oh, the young generation, they're not learning this stuff. Well, then it's our obligation to
It
do
is.
something
Teach
about
them,
it.
right.
And so what are you doing about it other than complaining or pointing out how stupid the young people are? Well, they're not really stupid, they're very smart, they just haven't been taught
Right,
properly.
right.
That's right.
So we're trying to do something about it. And and we do it, you know, you see these men on the street interviews. I think of Mark Dice, the YouTube guy, and, you know, he makes people up, it's so dangerous how ignorant people are, you know. But our job isn't to make people feel stupid.
No.
Our job is to help them. So we started doing a outreach event. We've been doing outreach events right along. You know, we do the Cheshire Fair, we're gonna be doing this year again. But we have a little 10-question quiz that we like people to do, and we offer them a free constitution, fill out the quiz. We were on Boston Common 2 weeks ago for about 3 or 4 hours, and it was the first time we used to do the Common on July 4th, named how many signers of the Declaration can you name? And you know, when people teach me something, I don't care what your background is, your philosophy, whether you're liberal or conservative, you teach me something, I'm going to appreciate that.
Mhm.
It's going to be hard for me to dislike someone who helps me learn something.
Right.
So we're at the Boston Common. The thing about the Boston Common, people from all over the United States, in fact, all over the world are there.
World of it, I would say.
And we had a great experience. We looked, the people that lived in Greater Boston did terrible on the test. We didn't get anybody more than 1 or 2 right. Well, we had 2 gals from West Virginia. We have a video, it's on video too on my Facebook page. One girl got 7 right. I says, that makes you probably a conservative Congress member. I mean, because most congressmen wouldn't get this test right.
That's so true.
By the way, Jim Rubin took the test,
Oh, did he?
and this was a couple of years ago, and to his credit, he got an 80. But what he got wrong, one of the questions is, how old do you have to be to run for the U.S. Senate? He got that one wrong. he thought it was 35.
I wonder how Maxine
No.
Waters would have done with that test.
She, yeah, probably not getting any right. And we had a professor of a college president, junior college president in Virginia. He got it 90. So, but most people do very badly. But a goal is that they fill out the test. Said, gee, I didn't know that. Oh my good. And I said, you know, you might know the box scores of your favorite baseball team or the lineup of on Channel 5 or what have you. I think the Constitution is a little more important. And we go to homeschool shows, and homeschoolers tend to do a better job. If their parents are good at math, they tend to be better at math. But if the parents don't know the history of the Constitution, chances are that their children won't know it. Or we'll hear, oh, I took that 2 years ago. I said, you took it 2 years ago, but the Constitution is something that stays with you the rest of your life.
Right,
It's
it
not,
affects everything
it's
you
not
do every day.
You know, you take Algebra 1, and unless you don't have a need to use algebra, you don't revisit it.
Again, right.
You forget about it, which I've done. When we homeschool, and my 16-year-old says, oh, we're doing this. I says, this is past my pay grade. I forgot this, because I could do multiplication, addition, subtraction, fractions, and the stuff that I'd use all the time. But don't ask me to do some of the stuff.
And geometry and...
Yeah, geometry I could be okay with, but, so,
I know the shapes.
and the square roots and how to find the areas and all that good
Yeah.
stuff, yeah. But, and you know
Well, I
what pi
think-
is, of course.
Yes, I do. And I think it's really awesome that you hand out the Constitution. I have one in my purse. My boys have one in their cars. Whenever I have extra ones, I hand them to people. And, you know, every once in a while, you pull that out and, you know, what's
What's
this
that thing?
amendment?
Yeah.
What's, you know, and someone starts talking about it, you whip it out and you're like, really? That's not what it says
No,
here. And they're not expecting that.
One of the key questions, not on our quiz, but we'll probably add it, what type of government do we have? And the average person would say,
Democracy.
Democracy.
It's a democratic
well, okay, well,
republic.
let's look at the manual, let's say the Freedom Manual. And on Article 4, Section 4, it says all states are guaranteed a Republican form of government. So the word democracy is not in here. Now, I understand that there's one or two state constitutions that the word was added recently.
Oh, okay.
But if you look at all of the organic constitutions, in fact, our founders were afraid of democracy. James Madison in Federalist 10 said democracy leads to, how do they say it? Democracies lead to turbulence and contention. They are short in their lives and violent in their deaths.
Good Lord.
Yeah, so they had
Well,
strong.
Well, on that note, we're going to go to a break, and we'll see you in 3 minutes and come back to
Excellent.
this conversation and see what else we can learn.
Excellent.
Let the queen finish her sentence. In 3, 2, and we're live.
Well, welcome back, Nashua. We're here in studio on our first day of conservative Chic Chat in Nashua on 1590. If you'd like to call in and find out a little bit more about Camp Constitution or put your 2 cents in on our first third of the show, call 603-816-1590. Again, this is 1590 AM in Nashua, and we're going to be talking for the next year about everything women and everything America and everything Constitution, and we're going to be making America great again, and we're starting with Nashua, and
Well,
we're going to get bigger and bigger.
Let me recommend a guest for you, Chris Ann Hall.
Okay.
And I interviewed her on my show recently on women of the American Revolution. And women
Ooh.
played a significant role, something that a lot of people who know history don't know about this. And there were some local ladies. One of them was Prudence Wright of Pepperell, Massachusetts.
Ooh,
Who
say
led
that
it-
3 times. Prudence Wright.
Prudence Wright, Pepperell, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's just, you're bored of Pepperell, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a covered bridge there.
Okay. Oh, I know which, yeah.
Well, that was where the bridge wasn't, there was a bridge there, but it wasn't covered at that time.
Mhm.
She and her ladies, the men were off circling Boston, and most of them fought in Bunker Hill. She led the first female militia, and they stopped a British patrol, and the British patrol included her brother, who was a Tory. And they see these ladies with muskets, and they thought, come on, this nonsense. And the brother said, oh, well, my sister says she's going to shoot. She'll shoot. And they captured some important documents. Had they been in the hands of the British, it may have been proved detrimental. And people don't know that, you know, that's
No,
history.
that's awesome.
Yeah, Prudence Wright, and
That
I
goes right
love it.
along
Mercy,
with the.
Mercy Otis Warren, she wrote one of the first histories of the Revolutionary War. And she participated, she knew the principle. It's one thing, you know, you write a book, you read 100 books and then you write another one based on those 100 books. She knew John Adams, she knew George Washington, they went to her, they visited her place. And so I was encouraged to learn more about Mercy Warren Otis, and she's buried in Burial Hill in Plymouth. She lived in Plymouth, and at the gravesite where she's buried is just a short distance from where one of my ancestors, William Shurtleff, but that's another. I don't want to bore you with family history. So I took a trip to the Plymouth Museum, and I said, "Oh, that's her desk over, her table over here, where she did this and such." I took a little picture of that. I made a little video, and I did it. You know, Chris Ann Hall inspired me. Chris Ann Hall hadn't got a chance to do this visitation, and then the house that she lived in was just a short distance from the museum. It's now a restaurant. And then I went down to Barnstable, where she was from. Now her brother was James Otis, who was very well known.
Yeah,
He was the one that
elevator.
writs of assistance.
Okay.
He's the one that gave that speech that really led to the War of Independence. And James was struck by lightning. He predicted how you'd die. He said, "I'd be struck by lightning," and he was. And he died. He actually fought the Battle of Bunker Hill too. He just borrowed his neighbor's musket, and just like it was going on a picnic for the day. But so that was his sister. So if you go to the Barnstable Courthouse, you'll see a statue of both Mercy and James. And I went there, got some footage, and I said, "There's got to be a historical society." And it was in the middle of the week, and they were open. You know, they're only open
Well,
for.
yeah,
I went in
half
there
a
and
day once a
said, and they had the original cast of the statues. You know, people, the sculptures always do
Yep.
a smaller original version. And I said, "Is the house standing?" They said, "It burned down a long time ago. But we have a banister." They showed me the banister, so I got that. And then the library across the street had some of her. She was quite the essayist, and she initially did not like the U.S. Constitution.
really?
She was concerned that it would lead to too much government. You know, she eventually embraced it, but initially she had reservations.
Well, yeah, I guess she was kind of right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
You know,
And then there was Hannah Dustin, not Hannah Dustin, I'm sorry, Deborah Sampson. And if you do a little search for that, Deborah Sampson served in the Revolutionary War for about almost 4 years, I think, 4.5 years, until she was wounded. She was using a different name. She used the name of Robert Shurtleff, who was another ancestor of mine. And I got to bore you with family history. And when she was wounded, the surgeon said, "She's not a Robert. I think we got a Roberta here." But she was a very brave soldier. And so it was it's women, and it was Lord Cornwallis was asked about. He was talking about. He said, "We can beat the men,
But we can't beat the
but
women.
then we get the women to do." And the women of Lexington, in Massachusetts, they got their men motivated. So the idea that women, they were just subservient, they sat around and just knitted, and that's a lie. And so I think it means history comes alive. We also we do focus on some great black patriots. Now today, the revisionists, the liberals, and the militants will say, "Oh, slavery, 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 slavery. It's all about slavery. Nothing good happened until 1963. So what they're saying is all those incredible sacrifices made by their ancestors were in
Right.
vain.
Correct.
You know, some of them died. Some of them were wounded at Lexington, died at Bunker Hill. In fact, it was Salem Poor. They believe that was actually the one who killed Major Pickham, the British commander of that battle. And we teach this, and we don't believe history has color.
No.
But this idea of black history and white history,
Yeah.
what we do is that there are certain blacks that made incredible contributions, and that should be well known.
Well, that should be taught equally side by side along with the rest of it. And like you said, instead of black history, white history, pink history,
History, yeah.
we need it to be the history of the United States.
So last year I gave a class on black patriots of the Revolution. It was based on a book that's still in print. It was written in the 1840s by a Nell. I think it was William Nell, who's a black man historian. So we try to broaden it, and we do a lot of intense classes on the Constitution as well, but the Constitution isn't a dull, boring thing. I mean, if you take it in your typical school, if they do teach it,
right.
oh, it was written by Eurocentric slave owners who hated women, and there's nothing good about that. So we teach it becomes alive. One of the misconceptions that the Constitution was a slave document, and even my 8th grade teacher, whom I adored, Mrs. Wolf, she said that it upheld slavery. You know, Frederick Douglass read this Constitution, and he said, it's not a slave document, quite the contrary. Most Americans don't know that. The 3/5 compromise is, oh, you see, they said every 5 slaves, or every 5 black slaves that were counted as 3 whites. Ah, see. Well, you had 13 states, 13 states under the Articles of Confederation. By the time the Constitution was written, you already had some that did away with slavery. Massachusetts, for example, did away with it in the 1780s. Pennsylvania, I think a few years later. This led to the eventual abolition of slavery. Unfortunately, it took a long time, and a civil war resulted in so. But the 3/5 compromise wasn't that. It actually reined in the power of the states that had a lot of slaves, because the states like South Carolina, Virginia, and Georgia had very large slave populations. Well, they would have had a whole lot more members of Congress.
Right.
So they said, well, I'll tell you what, no, Massachusetts didn't have any slaves at that time. Connecticut, which didn't abolish slavery to the 1840s, by the way, had a small percentage. So we're going to lose representation in these states with small slave or no slaves. So they made a compromise. But it didn't encourage slavery. It was just the opposite. It curtailed the power of states with large slave populations.
Gotcha.
And the Constitution said we will do away with the slave trade by 1808, totally, the importation of slaves, I should say, which was, and Congress passed a law in 1807, and it was signed, and so slavery was, the slave trade, this importation was done away with, which I think would have been led to a gradual, without a civil war, but yeah. And the Constitution also didn't say states couldn't abolish slavery. States were free to do that, and a lot of states did, although it took time. You know, New York State was the late 1820s. Connecticut, New Jersey actually still had slaves up until the Civil War. People don't know that either.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And there were some
Wow.
Union states that were slave states, like Delaware. Delaware was a slave state.
That I
Maryland
didn't
was a
know.
slave state, you know.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
West Virginia came into the Union in 1863, was a slave state, came in as a slave state. Yeah. So these are things that a lot
little,
of people,
people forget or
Yeah,
don't
they don't know,
or don't care
Yeah.
to know.
Yeah.
So in these classes, I understand there's some pretty lively conversations and discussions, that it's not just,
Well, we want to make sure that the young people are learning this stuff, and by the way, the parents too. But we say to the parents or the instructor, don't ask questions in class. We want the young people to get it. So they'll be discarded. They'll be kind of intimidated if it becomes all adults, doing the thing. So you have questions afterwards. That's fine. But during the class, yeah, I think there's Emily can probably tell you, but each class is no more than 50 minutes long. You know, we got to be very strict about that. If you can't present your case in 50 minutes, then you're not doing it right. And if we don't, if it's a little bit less, that's fine. It means they get another 5-10 minutes to throw the frisbees or play the pool or the ping pong or whatever. But we do encourage young people to, economics, you hear economics and automatically, you just want to snooze. But we do it lively. Here's a silver dollar. Here's a real one, When I do the class, I haven't done it in a few years. I said, they call this sound money. Why do they call it sound money? Because when you drop it, it makes, it's not, but when you drop it, hey, cling. And here's a dollar bill. I just dropped that. Can you hear it? No, you have to have really good hearing, And we explain to them what happened, what causes inflation. And most people today, you say, look, all greedy people that just raise the price. Well, not quite how it works, Why? Well, when I was a young man, I could buy baseball cards for 5 cents. And you get a big old glob of gum with that, Now they're like $2 without the glob of gum, which doesn't make it nearly as fun. The dentist probably conspired with the Topps bubble gum company to put that in there, to get, so we had to go to the dentist more often. But why are they $2 or $3 now? What happened to the baseball cards? They should be cheaper because it's a lot cheaper to produce that. The technology's advanced a long way. Well, it's because we print up too much money. And why do we do that? The Constitution says that it's supposed to have silver, gold, and silver currency. So why do we have this paper money? So we get into the Federal Reserve Bank. And again, it makes it interesting because how does it affect you? Because you're living in this economy. You're going to have, some of you already have jobs, and you look at your pay stub, and gee, you're supposed to make $12 an hour, but you don't bring home $12 an hour.
Right.
Because you're taking 5% here and 15% there and this and this. I said, what's all this about? And then it becomes interesting.
Right.
And then we say it's up to your generation. Because you're going to be the Congress members and the state reps and the city councilors and the town managers.
Right, and you're the ones that are going to have the more taxes and more 1%.
That's right.
Well,
Exactly.
if you look at that, if you look at your the Verizon bill or your electric bill. Karen and I talk about this a lot. Me more than Karen, but you look at it and there's 3 and 4 lines of taxes. This tax, that tax, this tax, blah, 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 blah. And it's just chipping away at your money. So not only when you earn the money, they're taking the state tax and the federal tax and blah, blah, blah. Then you take your little pittance home, and then all of a sudden you have other services, and you're being taxed on each one of those services.
That's right.
I mean, we're literally being taxed to death. So I think that would be a great class.
I know we get a few minutes left. What I
Yeah.
want to do, Sam Blumenfeld
Yeah.
left his library to me,
Oh,
and it was he was a dear friend. And what we did was he archived a lot of his work on our website, Sam Blumenfeld Archives. We are getting in 4 months, we got over 600,000 views and about 20,000 downloads of his most important work, in my opinion, was his Alpha Phonics, how to teach people how to read using phonics, a workbook. We use it for all 5 of our children, are good readers. We also have all 128 lessons in audio and video, at your discretion. You can download the thing free of charge, so people can learn how to read using our website. And we also have a lot of his speeches over the years, and he was exposing this long before people even knew what Common Core was. We're talking about the 60s and 70s.
right.
So go to our website, campconstitution.net, and you can have this great resource. And
Excellent.
It's all free.
Good thing for everybody, and especially for homeschoolers. What
That's
a
right.
great, place to get some truth.
Yeah, Sam was the editor of Grosset and Dunlop. He edited the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew back in the late 50s and 60s.
That was my
Yeah.
favorite. Oh my goodness.
And he knew a lot of people in the publishing world, in the political world. We have a lot of those letters. I'm really happy to see that Moshe Shombay was the leader of Katanga, which was assaulted by the UN. It was the Belgian Congo, now
Right.
Zaire. He was pro-Western leader, and the UN came in and did a lot of nasty business. And Sam knew him very well and spoke French. I have some of their correspondence, which is up on this site. It's available nowhere else in the world, as far as I know. So for some great history there too.
Really?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
is very interesting. So that was campconstitution.net.
.net, and you'll see the Sam Blumenfeld archives. there.
Exactly. And then we've got the camp, which is July 2nd to the 9th.
And you
And
can
in
go.
Renge, New Hampshire.
You can get a hold of me on Facebook, or just go to the website and say I'm interested. We do have some tuition money available on a sort of limited case-by-case basis, and that's only possible because we have people that support the camp financially and like the idea that we are getting worthy campers and we can cover their costs. So if you like the idea of helping out, please make a donation. You can become a sponsor by just,
Exactly.
by-
Volunteer sometime if you've got some
That's right, too.
expertise, and
That's right too, yeah.
that would be really good to, lend your expertise and teach some of our younger people exactly what it's all about, and it's not what they think it is, or
That's right.
what they don't think it is in some cases.
And you're
So,
welcome to come by.
absolutely, I've got
Please,
it on my list.
Are you there regular business hours?
Well, whether it's an overnight camp,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so.
So, and most of the classes are in the morning?
Yeah, morning, I'll send you ladies a schedule.
Yeah, that'd
And
be
just-
great, 'cause
Just
I
give me a
think-
heads up so I know,
When we're coming?
so our team of,
You need
getting
to do
our-
this for adults.
Well,
What
it
do
is,
you do? You can, you have to
You
listen
can.
in the class.
yeah, you can.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
can.
okay.
Oh, you're welcome, yeah, you
Yeah,
can.
Karen and I were planning on taking a
Yeah.
nice little trip up there. Maybe
Do
we
a
can
remote.
do.
You
I
want
was
to do a
gonna say
remote?
we'd do a remote.
Can you do a
That'd be
remote?
great, so we don't have to go to David
That'd be-
Barton.
that'd be cool,
We have Hal,
That would be really neat. I think that'd be so
I
cool.
think
That's not
that's
far away.
right here in New Hampshire.
I know.
Yeah.
You couldn't do
And
anything
Mass.
better.
That's awesome.
I know, and to get into Lexington would be even cooler.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. All right, Nashua. So we're wrapping it up, and again, this was Lynn and Karen. Karen's often meandering across the United States, but I've got Cynthia, my chit-chatting lady from Thursdays, and Hal Shurtleff. And we just want to say have a great day. It's raining, but that's all right. The sun will be out tomorrow. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.